In times when Mr. Harvey was too ill to record his broadcast, he turned that task over to the creator and sole writer of the rest of the story, his son. Here's Paul Harvey Jr.
Now, the rest of the story. In the U.S., we used to call them streetcars or trolleys, but in London, of course, they are trams. So, you were on a tram in London. It's a lovely day. You're daydreaming out the window. The tram stops at the corner. There's the usual exchange of parting passengers and boarding pedestrians. And the tram starts to move again. Your attention is not really focused on the conductor as he walks up the aisle taking fares. You've seen him do it so many times before. But then you notice he's taking more time than usual with one of the passengers, and you begin to listen to their conversation. Seems the passenger has no money for his fare. You wonder at this because he's not poorly dressed. He doesn't appear to be the sort of bloke who would try to cheat the tram line. It's like this, the passenger explains. He carries with him only the precise amount of money he needs each day. In this case, all he needed was the money for the tram, but it appears he's forgotten the required tuppence. Now you're studying the man's face. His eyes are penetrating, but kind. His nose is prominent, rather broad. His cheeks are round and merry. His hair is light and straight, combed to the side, and his beard and mustache are full and well-groomed. But now at once you're distracted by the sharp words of the conductor. If the passenger does not have tuppence for his fare, then he will be put off at the next corner. The man nods without protest. He doesn't complain that he'll be stranded far from his destination, which he will. He doesn't tell the conductor he'll repay him, which he would. He says nothing. When the tram stops, he allows himself to be ushered meek as a lamb to the street. And as he disappears in the distance, you think to yourself, you've seen that face. You know that man. Well, in any case, you were correct in assuming that he was not too poor to afford the fare. However, he had this thing, not a phobia exactly, simply an abhorrence for carrying or handling money. He had no logical explanation for the way he felt, and certainly there was nothing philosophical or moral about it. Money just felt dirty to him, and that was that. Might it have related to something in his childhood? Well, when he was a young boy, his father's business failed, and the family was unsettled by that. But whatever it was, we know his aversion to touching cash only intensified through the years. And the irony was, it seemed that everything he touched turned to money. You see, the streetcar passenger once ejected for lack of 2 pennies. The man who would rather have had a pocket full of worms than a wallet full of cash. He chose a life of philanthropy as a novel solution to his dilemma. To library research projects and for world peace, he gave the money he could not help but make and could not wait to get rid of, a sum of $330 million. All your life you've heard of Andrew Carnegie, and the Carnegie Trusts, and the Carnegie Institute, and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and Carnegie Hall. Only now you know the rest of the story.
And now, the rest of the story. You know, it's hard to imagine someone with so much money having an aversion to it. It seems these days that we all get caught up in the struggle to get money. Many people live for it. Many people have even killed for it. The almighty dollar. Many years ago, when I was working towards my undergraduate degree in history, I visited several cities and towns in Scotland as part of a research project. In one of the many museums I visited, I spoke with a curator about Andrew Carnegie. Most of us, Americans I mean, have heard of people performing in Carnegie Hall in New York City. It's a world-famous venue. As we discussed what little I knew about Andrew Carnegie, I noticed she winced each time I said his name. Now, I was in college, thought I knew everything, so I mentioned his name again just to see her reaction. Sure enough, I got another wince. I finally swallowed my pride and asked what was wrong. She didn't really want to correct me, but she said that most Americans mispronounce his last name. She said the name is actually pronounced Carnegie. To test her claim, I listened carefully as other people in other museums pronounced his name. They pronounced it as she had. Since being put in my place, I have a hard time pronouncing his name as Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was born in November 1835 in this small weaver's cottage located in Dunfermline, Scotland, to William and Margaret Carnegie. William Carnegie was a successful cloth weaver. In the year following Andrew's birth, William's income was such that he moved his family into a much larger home. Andrew attended the Free School in Dunfermline, which was like a public school. The Free School was a gift to the town by a wealthy Scottish judge named Adam Rowland. Now, if you think about it, Andrew's desire to use his wealth for the public good can be traced all the way back to Adam Rowland's Free School. By 1847, William's weaver business was struggling. In 1846 and 1847, Scotland's potato crop, upon which its citizens had become over-reliant, was devastated by potato blight. This is commonly referred to as the Highland Potato Famine. Although the government and philanthropists stepped in to keep people from starving, people had little money to spend on William's woven fabrics. Andrew's mother sold potted meats to help their struggling family. In 1848, William and Margaret borrowed money from Margaret's brother, a Scottish politician named George Louder, and the family made plans to sail to America. Now, this was only the second time 12-year-old Andrew had been outside of his hometown. The first time came in late August 1884 when Andrew's family traveled 18 miles to Edinburgh to see Queen Victoria. Not to meet Queen Victoria, oh no, to see her pass in a carriage. You see, she was on a royal visit to Scotland. The Carnegie family boarded a ship for America shortly thereafter. In September 1848, the Carnegie family arrived in Allegheny, Pennsylvania. Andrew's father was unable to revive his weaving business in America. Andrew and his father got jobs at the Scottish-owned Anchor Cotton Mills. For 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, Andrew worked as a bobbin boy where he changed spools of thread in the cotton mill. He earned $1.20 a week. Now, adjusted for inflation, that would be just under $48 per week, or about 66 cents per hour in today's money. In the following year, Andrew became a telegraph messenger boy in the Pittsburgh office of the Ohio Telegraph Company, for which he was paid $2.50 per week. By 1850, he had been promoted to telegraph operator. Now remember, he was only 14 or 15 years old at the time. One perk of the job that Andrew took advantage of was that Colonel James Anderson opened his personal library of 400 volumes to working boys each Saturday night. Like his experience at the Free School, Andrew always remembered Colonel Anderson's generosity. Andrew said that he, this is a quote, resolved, if ever wealth came to me, to see to it that other poor boys might receive opportunities similar to those for which we are indebted to the nobleman. In 1853, 18-year-old Andrew Carnegie went to work for the Pennsylvania Railroad as a telegraph operator and secretary. 6 years later, Andrew was promoted to superintendent of the Western Division of the Pennsylvania Railroad at a salary of $1,500 per year. That's over $50,000 in today's money. Not too bad. Andrew hired his younger brother Tom to be his personal secretary and telegraph operator. In 1855, Andrew invested $500 in the Adams Express Company, which contracted with the Pennsylvania Railroad to carry its messages. A few years later, Andrew received a gift of some shares in Theodore Tuttle Woodruff's sleeping car company. Andrew reinvested his profits over and over. One of his most successful of his early business transactions was when he negotiated a merger between Theodore Tuttle Woodruff's sleeping car company, which he owned shares of stock in, and George Pullman's sleeping car company. You've heard of the Pullman Company. The merger was a fantastic success for Woodruff, Pullman, and Andrew Carnegie. Andrew's investments made him a moderately wealthy man. But Andrew made his real fortune investing in the steel industry. He controlled more iron and steel operations at one time than any other person has ever owned in the history of the United States. According to Paul Harvey Jr., Andrew Carnegie despised the feel, the uncleanliness of money, but he actually despised the pursuit of wealth. He once wrote, "The amassing of wealth is one of the worst species of idolatry. No idol more debasing than the worship of money." Andrew came up with what he called the Andrew Carnegie dictum, which was to spend the first third of life getting a good education, spend the next third making all the money you can, and spend the last third of your life giving it all away to worthwhile causes. In 1868, 33-year-old Andrew wrote, "I propose to take an income no greater than $50,000 per annum, per year. Beyond this I need ever earn, make no effort to increase my fortune, but spend the surplus each year for benevolent purposes. Let us cast aside business forever, except for others." Now this reminds me of what Ebenezer Scrooge finally realized in Charles Dickens' novella A Christmas Carol. When Andrew sold his Carnegie Steel Company to J.P. Morgan in 1901 for $303.5 million, he surpassed John D. Rockefeller as the richest man in America. By the time of his death, at the age of 83 in 1919, Andrew had given away about $350 million to worthwhile causes. That was about 90% of his accumulated wealth. I can't even grasp the concept of $350 million. Now, adjusted for inflation, that would be about $65.5 billion in today's money. Incomprehensible. He gave more than $60 million to public libraries in America and Europe and paid for 1,681 libraries that we know of. One of the libraries he built was the Carnegie Library in Long Beach, California. In March 1910, Andrew made a surprise visit to the library. After his visit, he looked back at the library and said that being able to pay for the library is one of the sweetest of all rewards. Andrew Carnegie was right that helping others is the sweetest of all rewards. We don't have to be fantastically wealthy to help others. It doesn't cost a thing. All it takes is a little kindness. A simple smile to a stranger can make all the difference in their day, and it'll make us feel better too. I'm Brad Dison. Thanks for watching, and now you know the rest of the story.